We're gonna make the chase. As you can see, whenever we comes in started range, the enemy is chasing. Okay, so we're gonna make this. So let's get into this. Select the first sprite and drag it into this in view. As you can see, firstly we're gonna rename this to enemy, something like that. Okay, and we're gonna go over to sprite render and we're gonna flip horizontally. Okay, so flip, and we're gonna check this x1. As you can see, now it's flip. We're gonna add two components. Firstly, we're gonna add the rigid body one. So hit this add component, find rigid body 2D there, and what we're gonna do, we're gonna set gravity scale to 0, so it will not fall down due to gravity. And we're gonna select collision detection to continuous, and we're gonna go over to constraint and we're gonna freeze the z axis rotation. Okay, if you don't freeze that, it will flip like this. If we go to rotation and z axis, as you can see, it will flip like this. So we're gonna set back to 0 and we're gonna freeze the rotation about z axis, that's why. Okay, and we're gonna add another component which is circle collider 2D for collision detection. Okay, so we're gonna add this component and we're gonna add circle collider 2D, hit this, and we're gonna resize this collider as the size of a sprite. Okay, we're gonna set something like 0.7f, and we're gonna offset the y fit to fit the enemy. As you can see, now it's predefined. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna create a circle around this enemy. Okay, we're gonna create a point. From that point we're gonna create a circle around this enemy, and if the player comes in that circle, the enemy will chase, okay, after him. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna go to enemy, we're gonna create an empty child game object and we're gonna move it center of enemy. Okay, so right click on enemy game object and create an empty child game object, name that to something like center point, something like that. Okay, center, something like that, and we're gonna move over to enemy center. Okay, and we're gonna select an icon in inspector. We're gonna select this one, yellow, something like red or something like this, and we're gonna create an enemy script for that. So go over to assets. Okay, right click, create. Okay, C# script, something, name that to something like enemy, and select this enemy game object. Okay, enemy game object, and drag that script to enemy at component section. I already have created, so I directly dragged it. So double click that to open up in Visual Studio. What we're gonna do, we're gonna remove these two namespaces in the top, we don't need this, and we're gonna go over to update function. Okay, to create a circle around that point, we have to use uh, function. We have to use physics 2D dot overlap circle. Okay, overlap circle, and this function will take the position from where you want to create the circle. So we're gonna create that circle from that center point. Okay, and it will take second argument the radius of that circle, you have to specify. Okay, you have to specify the radius, and the third argument, it will take the layer mask. Basically it will which layer you want to target. So we're gonna target the player, so we have to assign the player as a player layer. Okay, so for now we're gonna comment this out by double slash. Okay, and we're gonna go over to Unity editor. Okay, we go to a Unity editor, and what we're gonna do, select the player in the inspector right corner. As you can see, layer which is selected default. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna assign this player as a player layer. So hit this over here and add layer. Okay, and name it something like player and save it, and basically hit enter and head again to player game object once again and assign that layer default to player. Now we have assigned this player as a player layer. Okay, and then doing it overrides, then apply all, so to it to change in the prefab as well. And we're gonna go over to script once again. We need to assign these variables in the top. Okay, so what we need that point. Okay, we need this center point, so we're gonna create an empty transform. As you know, transform is responsible for position. So we're gonna go to top and we're gonna say make it public to set in inspector, and that will be transform. You can call it transform, and we're gonna call it something like center pose. Okay, center pose, something like that, and close that off with semicolon. And we're gonna also assign the radius of that circle. Okay, so we're gonna set public. To set in inspector, we can adjust in the inspector, so that's why we made it public, and that will be float. Okay, float variable, and you can call it something like attack radius. By default you can set it to any value. I'm going to set it to something like 1.5f. And we also need to create the layer mask. Okay, basically which layer we want to target. So we're gonna choose the player layer, so we're gonna make it public to set in inspector, and that will be layer mask. Okay, layer mask, you can call it something like target layer layer or player layer, something like that. I'm going to call it target layer, sorry, target layer, and close that off with semicolon and control S on your keyboard to save this and add again to Unity. We need to assign those variable in the enemy script. Okay, we have created those field, we need to assign those. So just wait for to compile and select the enemy and go to enemy script. You will able to see those field will come up. Okay, because we made it public and we can adjust in the inspector, so that's why we are making it public. Okay, we made it public. So just wait for to compile and you will able to see that. So if we go to enemy script, sorry, enemy game object, as you can see, center post which says none, basically empty. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna assign, we're gonna drag the center post to center. Okay, now we have assigned it. And as you can see, attack radius by default we set 1.5, but you can adjust over here, that's why we made it public. And then we're gonna choose target layer to player. Okay, as you can see, it selected nothing, so we're gonna choose this player. Okay, and as you know, we assigned the player game object as a player layer. Okay, so we're gonna go to script once again and we're gonna use this function now. Okay, so we're gonna comment. So we have to use physics 2d dot overlap circle, so it will take the position from where you want to create the circle. So we're gonna create the circle center post. Okay, center post dot position, and we have to pass the radius. Okay, we specified the radius as you can see 1.5, so we're gonna pass this attack radius, but we can adjust the in inspector, so that's why we made it public. And the third argument, it will take the layer, basically target layer, which layer you want to target. So we're gonna pass this target layer. Okay, and as you know, we have chosen target layer as a player layer, so it will target the player layer, and close that off with semicolon. Okay, so this function over here, okay, it will be true or false if the circle is colliding with the other player layer. Okay, so this function will be true, else this function will be false. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna put the result into another variable that will be collider. Okay, collider 2d. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna set collider 2d and we're gonna call it something like hit info or hit something like that, and set equal to this. So this function over here, it will be true or false if the circle is colliding with the player layer, so this function will be true, so the hit over here will be true because we directly setting it. And if the circle is not colliding with the player layer, so this will be, this function over here will be false, so the hit over here for will be false. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna go to down and we're gonna check if hit is true. Basically if hit basically means the circle is colliding with the player layer, so this function over, so what we're gonna do, if the circle is colliding with the player layer, we're gonna check if it's working or not. So we're gonna print out a message in the console, so we have to use debug.log, and we're gonna call it something, we're gonna say something like, sorry, player in attack range, something like that. Okay, something, and close that off with semicolon. Okay, so basically this if the circle is colliding with the player layer, as you can see, if hit is true, what we're doing, we're just printing out the message in the console which says player in attack range, but you can write whatever you need. Okay, so the if the circle is colliding with the player layer, so this will be true, and if it's true, if the hit is true, then we're printing out this message in the console. Okay, control S on your keyboard to save this and head again to Unity. Okay, so just wait for to compile and you will able to see. So just wait for to compile, so just wait for to compile and you will able to see. Okay, just wait for to compile and you will able to see. So if we choose the enemy game object, as you can see, we're not able to see the circle. Okay, we're not able to see the circle. To see the circle, we have to use another function that is called on draw gizmo selected. Okay, so we're gonna go over to script once again, and the bottom we're gonna create that here on draw. Okay, on draw gizmo selected, you have to type this function as it name, else it will not gonna work. Okay, you have to type as it is, as you can see, void on draw gizmo selected. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna draw the circle, so we have to use gizmos. Okay, gizmos dot draw wire sphere, we have to use this. So this function will take the position from where you want to create the circle. So we're gonna pass, as we know, we have created this center post and we drag at the center post, so we're gonna create the circle from center post. Okay, center post dot position, and a second argument, it will take the radius. As we know, we have assigned this attack radius in the top, as you can see, so we're gonna pass this attack radius. Okay, attack radius and close that off with semicolon. Okay, but this function will give you an error. Okay, this gizmos dot draw where peer will give you error if you haven't assigned this center pose. Okay, center pose in the inspector, if you haven't dragged center pose in center pose field, this function will still try to find that center pose, but it will not give will not get able to that center pose. So that's why it will throw us an error. Okay, so what we're gonna do, we before we draw we need to check. Okay, so we're gonna check if center pose, okay, center pose equals to null. Basically means if the empty center pose field is empty, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna use this return. Basically after return means this line won't get called. Okay, if we haven't assigned the center pose, basically if we haven't dragged the center pose as a to center pose field, so what we just returning over here, as you can see. Okay, basically after return this line won't get called. Okay, but if we have assigned this center pose to center pose field, as we know we have dragged the center pose to center pose field, so this over here will be ignored and this will run, so it will create the circle from that point. Okay, so control s on your keyboard to save this and return to unity. You will able to see the circle will be drawn from this center pose position, around the center pose position. Okay, and we assigned the attack radius, but you can adjust over here, so that's why we made it public. You can sort it to something like 3 4 5, it's up to you. Just wait for to compile and you will able to see that. Okay, so so as you can see the circle has been drawn from this point center post, but we can adjust the radius over here. So we're gonna set it to something like 3. Okay, and I'm gonna move this player over here something like that. Okay, and if we select the console and if we hit play now, okay, if the circle collide with this circle, okay, if the player collide with this circle, that message will print up, says that player in attack range, as we know. Okay, so as you can see, whenever we collide with the circle, as you can see that message is popping out again and again. But if we not collide with this, as you can see the message has been stopped popping out, as you can see, because we're doing over here, as you can see. Okay, if the hit is true, basically if the circle is colliding with our player layer, so as you can see this message will pop out, else it will not pop out. Okay, so as you can see, so what we're gonna do, instead of printing out message, we're gonna chase the player. So what we need to we also need the player position to chase the player. Okay, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna create an enemy script empty field of transform. As you know, transform is responsible for position, so that we're gonna drag the player to player transform field, then we will have the player position, then we can chase after him. So we're gonna go over to script once again, we're gonna go to top of the class and we're gonna make an empty field and we're gonna set it public, so we can adjust in the we're gonna set in inspector that will be transform for position. Okay, and you can call it something like player position or player something like that. I'm going to call it something like player position, something like that. Okay, and control s on your keyboard to save this and add again to unity. So in enemy script you will able to see an empty field of transform player position will appear. We name it player position. Okay, so what we need to drag this player into that field, then we will have the player reference, then we can chase him. Okay, so just wait for to compile and you will able to see that. Okay, so just wait for to compile and you will able to see that. So we're gonna drag, as you can see, says player position which is non-transform, basically empty. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna drag this player into that field. Now we have the player position, now we can chase. So we can go over to update function. If the circle is colliding with the player layer, as you can see this function over here will be true. If it's true, the hit over here will be true because we directly setting it, and if it hit is true, we just printing out this message. Okay, if the player is colliding with the circle, okay, enemy circle. So instead of printing out message, we're gonna chase. Okay, so we're gonna remove this message. Okay, and we're gonna set, okay, we're gonna set transform. Okay, transform transform dot position. As you know, transform dot position basically means the current position of the enemy, and what we're gonna do, we're gonna set equal to vector2 dot move towards. Okay, so basically this function over here will take the current position, and as a second argument it will take the target position, basically where you want to go, and the third argument it will take the speed, how much fast should you go. Okay, so we have to assign. So we're gonna what we're gonna do, we're gonna pass the current position. So as you know, transform dot position basically means the current position, and a second argument it will take the target position. So we're gonna pass this player dot position because we want to chase, sorry, I just missed it spelling. So we want to, so we have to pass player dot position, we want to chase the player, so that's why we pass as a target position our player position dot position. Okay, and and third argument it will take the speed. So we're gonna make a variable and we're gonna set it public, so we can adjust in the inspector, and we're gonna call it something like public, that will be public, and we're gonna set a call that will be float, and we're gonna call it something like chase speed, something like that, but I'm going to call it something like speed. Okay, by default you can set it to any value, but I'm not gonna set, so I'm gonna close that off with semicolon. I'm gonna set it inspector, so that's why I made it public. So as a third argument we have to pass the speed, and we also have to multiply this speed with time dot delta time, basically to make frame rate independence. Okay, so we're gonna multiply this time dot delta time and close that off with semicolon. Okay, control S on your keyboard. So transform dot position means over here the current position of the enemy, and we are setting equal to vector2 dot move towards. Basically this function will take the current position, okay, current position, and it will take as a second argument the target position, basically where you want to go, and as a third argument you have to specify the speed, how much fast should you go. We made it public, this parameter public float speed, so that's why we're going to adjust in inspector, we can set in inspector. Okay, if the circle is colliding, as you can see this function over here will be true if the circle is colliding with the player, so the over here hit is true. So if hit is true, what we're doing, we setting the current position of the enemy to the target position, basically we chasing the player. Okay, and we are doing an update function, and as you know update function calls every single frame, so that's why we're doing it over there, and control S on your keyboard to save this and again to Unity. Okay, whenever we comes around to this circle, enemy circle, the enemy will chase the player. Okay, so just wait for to compile and you will able to see that. Okay, so just wait for to compile and you will able to see that. Okay, so if we now hit play, okay, if we now hit play and if we come near to this circle, okay, the enemy will chase. Oh, but we also have to adjust the speed, we set it the speed 0. So if we collide with this circle, the enemy will not chase, because as we know we set the speed to 0, so we need to set it to some value. So let's suppose we're gonna set it to 1. As you can see, the enemy is chasing whenever we comes in this circle. Okay, as you can see. So in the next video we're gonna set the things uh, something like shooting mechanics, okay, and damage, something like that. Okay, we're gonna set it to next tutorial for this now. And if you are new to my channel, then subscribe for upcoming